All right, we are rolling live. This is Ungovernable. I am Matt. Jocelyn will be here in a couple of minutes. She is running an errand. She has to go pick up our oldest at a fun little friends event that they're having out at a bowling alley. So she will be here in a couple of minutes. We have an awesome guest today. I don't want to keep her waiting for too long. So just a reminder, like, comment, subscribe, share. We are not monetized on YouTube or Facebook, nor do we aspire to be. So help us out with the algorithm to help get the streams out there. And huge plus if you listen to our audio only version on the podcast, give us a review. So 5 stars or thumbs up or whatever on the platform that you watch your specific podcatcher that, I'm sorry, not watch, but listen to this broadcast on. Always looking forward to seeing your reviews, and hopefully you can help us out with the algorithm there. And a reminder, we take live questions and comments. So if you are watching the live stream right now, definitely feel free to participate. Or even if you're watching the recorded version, you can leave a comment and we get back to you, or a question and we get back to you. So definitely want to hear what you have to say. So I'm going to hold off on the wine until Jocelyn gets here, because that's like a sacrosanct thing. And I don't want to like be, opening up the wine without my wife here. And then all of a sudden the locks get changed and stuff like that. So, dude, Forest Mommy tuning in. Definitely check out Forest Mommy stream. Terminator Mommy is her like alter ego account on Twitter. Got suspended earlier. So if she does get back on, or if she has another account, definitely end up following her. But follow her on YouTube and check out, she does 2 weekly streams. So definitely check out those streams if you look up Forest Mommy on YouTube. So without further ado, I have a special guest this week. We are talking about religion, spirituality, and kind of how those tie into the liberty movement or the liberty world. And so I have the distinct honor of being joined by Rebecca. Rebecca, how are you doing this fine evening?
I am good. It's so funny because I'm like, what the hell did I say on that tweet to make you even want to have me on the show? Because I'm like, honestly, like when I see stuff, I usually just, with the first thought that runs through my head, I'm like, oh, I got to respond to this. So I'm
Yeah.
like, what the
I
hell did I say? I'm like, huh, well, okay.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting first of all, so a lot of our episodes are inspired by these kind of like, random occurrences or thoughts and stuff like that that come up during the week in our life, and this was definitely one of them. So I don't have the original tweet. I could go back through all of my likes and stuff like
That'd
that, and
be a
all my,
million. Yeah.
yeah, right. I'm a Twitter degenerate, so there's so much there. But yeah, it was something to the effect of, and I'll pull up some example tweets too, because people seem to tweet about this a lot. But it was something to the effect of, someone who is a very religious person who is essentially warning people, do not be enticed by, these things that purport themselves as spiritual, right? Like,
Oh, I remember it's like it was sacrilegious if you into yoga, meditation, zodiac signs, and all this. I'm like, God, well, I'm going to hell for
yeah.
today.
I'm driving the bus, Rebecca. You can navigate for me.
Exactly. Yeah. So that tweet just, it's funny. So spirituality for me, I'll just give you like I grew up agnostic. So my dad was Catholic. My mom really wasn't religious for me growing up. So
Mhm,
I will tell you, so my dad's Mexican.
mhm.
So growing up, we had this is what I remember. Like it just still haunts me to this day. Like it was in like the playroom, but it was like Jesus hanging on the cross, and I was like with the Romans in front of him, and I was like,
Mhm.
every time I looked at it, it was like that's some scary shit. Like
Yeah.
this is just like, what am I looking at right now? So really didn't, but he didn't like force it on me. So
Mhm.
my parents didn't force any type of religion on me. So any religion that I got was from like my grandmother and my aunts on his side,
Hmm.
that would take me to church. But my parents were very, very open with letting me have my own opinions and form my own views on things.
I
So
That's
yeah.
interesting. That's extremely unique, I think, nowadays, because a lot of folks, if they do have some deep-seated religious beliefs, they want their kids to kind of like follow in that path, but it sounds like they kind of allowed you to explore on your own, or at least kind of develop your own path.
Oh, they did. Many fights with my
Yeah.
family about not really religion, but just I'm getting in fights about how my dad would use the N word, or calling lesbians and gays and trans freaks. It's like
Mm,
I had all these arguments with them. It's funny because I've changed their mind on a lot of things, but they allowed me to have my own opinion. Like
mhm,
they allowed it, which was really interesting because I come from a smaller town in Arkansas, and we were kind of known for kind of being a
mhm,
racist town and things like that. And it's real Republican in this state. So
sure.
to have two parents that allowed me to have my own voice, and they never quieted me down. They never told
Mm,
me to be quiet.
yeah,
So
and
I
and
think that
you're right in the heart of the Bible Belt right there too, right?
absolutely, yeah, we're part
Yeah.
of it. Ah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I will tell you, well, where do you want to start with it? I mean, gosh, I could go on from just childhood. It was scary for me because I believe in energy. So when that girl said about like the zodiac signs and all of this, I remember getting in an argument with this Pentecostal girl. He ended up becoming my best friend, by the way. In
Yeah.
high school, okay, I'm reading astrology, and she goes, "How can you read that? It's just words written on the paper." And I said, "You read the Bible every day."
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I literally looked at her, I was like, you read the Bible every day and you choose to believe that.
Right.
I mean, yeah, why wouldn't we believe that the alignment and stars? I mean, if it can affect the climate, and if it can affect the tide, and it can affect all of these things, why couldn't it affect our personalities?
Mm.
I mean, why couldn't it?
So how did you get introduced to it? I mean, like, it sounds like you grew up in a very, at the very least, religious household, right?
Hmm.
How did this stuff kind of like get introduced to you? Was it something that you had to specifically seek out, or was it something that was introduced to you in school or your personal life,
Well,
or how did that come about?
it's kind of so I've never had, even when I was agnostic, okay, so I love history.
Mhm.
And religion has a lot of history behind it. I mean, let's
Yes.
think about the Roman Catholics. I mean, extremely, the history of the Roman Catholic Church is by itself amazing.
Mm.
And I mean, they still do exorcisms. So how cool is that, right? I mean,
It's definitely some movie material, that's for sure.
exactly. So I mean, I will tell you, I get scared when I go to a mass. I'm like, "Oof, this is a lot." Um, so I've always had a really big interest in it, and I've never been. I'm a very open-minded person. I don't know where that's came from, but
Mhm,
I'm very, very open-minded, and I want to hear people's stories, and I want to learn about different things.
mhm.
And I mean, I remember going to a Marilyn Manson concert, and the Christians outside picketing, and everyone was being mean to them and throwing stuff at them. And here I am. I go and have a conversation with them because I'm like, well, what is your agenda to be out here? What do you think of us? Or, do you think we're all bad? I wanted to hear their opinion. I
Mhm.
wanted to have that conversation. And it actually was a really good conversation,
Mm.
before I went into the concert. So I got asked to go to church. I was pregnant at the time with a person I was with.
Mhm.
And this girl, she's African American. She worked for me. I was her supervisor, and we were leaving a Christmas party, and she said, "I don't know why I'm being felt like I need to ask you this, but would you go to church with me?" And I was like, "Why not?
Okay.
Why not?" So I went to this. I'm literally the salt and the pepper shaker at this church, and I start going with her, and I make a lot of meet a lot of amazing people, friends, and things like that. And
Mhm,
like I said, I believe in energy, and I've felt the Holy Spirit before. It scared the shit out of me when I was little, and every
mhm,
time I go into any type of anything that's spiritual, you can feel the energy. I mean, you get
mhm.
a group of people together, yeah, you're gonna feel it.
Yeah.
Especially if they're all, praying or doing whatever it is that they're doing or wherever it is. Um, but I remember, I felt it come over me again, and it's a really big rush. And they asked, if you wanted to be saved, and she said she'd walk with me, and that's when I decided to get saved. And I still have a lot of different beliefs, and I'm still learning as I
Mhm.
go.
Yeah.
Um,
That's interesting. So, you would come from kind of a place where you weren't necessarily, forced or compelled or at least directed, in a certain, belief in a direction of belief. Um, and so you had explored some different areas and, you had talked about, kind of like these kind of like,
oh, I even
astrology and
played
stuff like that.
I even played with Wiccan. I mean, I even
Yeah.
learned about that. I mean, that's an interesting religion as well in itself. Wiccan is, and it's beautiful. It has a lot of beautiful. I think spirituality is beautiful. I don't care what you believe in. It can be God. It can be the universe. It can be the trees.
Mm,
You can say you're not spiritual. You're spiritual if you have some sort of belief.
yeah.
Like let's stop just putting it as well, you're either Christian or you're not. I mean, you're
So so would you say that there's, it's a deep-seated belief of mine. I was raised Baptist. I was raised not Southern Baptist. I was raised Northern Baptist, but very fire and brimstone. You have to be saved, otherwise you're going to hell. That kind of belief system. And I always felt that there was a commonality amongst beliefs, whether it be conventional religions or it be some of these other belief systems that are out there. It just seems that there are some common elements, right? And that to me was the most important part. It was these common things. It wasn't the things that were kind of like the small little nuanced things that set them apart about, like, how you did communion, or whether you called, whether you believed it was the body of Christ or not, or if it was just symbolic and all these other things. Didn't really kind of like appeal to me to think that, like, one religion had it nailed, right? Like that they had the secret sauce. It really made sense to me that there was this kind of like common thread that really bound things together. Um, is that something that you've kind of like encountered or played with in your life? Or do you think that there's, some path that's correct and some path that's, maybe leading towards, destruction or in a wayward direction?
so I tend to stay away from churches that are all fire and brimstone.
Okay.
I really do. I really do. The Bible has a lot of good morals in it. It really does. It has a lot of good things in it. What I perceive and take from the Bible could be completely different from the message somebody else. And that's what
Mm,
I think. I think that people don't realize is that we all have different perception.
yeah.
And the way we perceive things and the way we hear things, the way we take things is all our own. So, like the conversation we're having now, you could be taking it a completely different way than somebody listening.
Yeah.
You know, they're probably thinking she's an idiot.
Yeah.
We don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't know. I mean, so have you ever been to a church and the guy's up there and you're like, oh, this guy's an idiot, you know?
Well, I can tell you in my younger life, when I was in, like my adolescence and whatnot, being brought up, even having this conversation, like kind of like entertaining even the idea of the fact that there's, something outside of the Baptist faith, or Baptist faith, or in a broader context, just the Christian faith or Judeo-Christian faith. Um, would have been looked at as, heresy or sinful, right? It would have been looked at as a certain level of evil, which I understand the context in which that gets taught, right? It's intended to help people from, kind of wandering astray, so to speak, and uh, who knows where it dates back to, but falling victim to, the occult or something like that, that might have been, dangerous back in the day, or something, perceived as dangerous. But nowadays it definitely seems like this kind of like relic of a time period where there was a lack of information. Whereas
Hmm.
nowadays we definitely have so much more information to draw off of, that maybe we don't need to, tell people that something that is perceived as negative is evil. We just have to tell them the truth about, like, these things can lead you down a bad path,
Absolutely.
if that makes sense.
Absolutely. But it doesn't always stream from the Bible. This is the thing I think what looks bad on Christianity, I guess.
Mhm.
How do I say this? Is that we don't talk about it. We don't talk about the different we don't talk about the different the different aspects. Hi, wifey.
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah.
Jocelyn's been on a whirlwind tour of most of New Jersey.
Oh God. Yes. It's raining. I keep thinking I'm going to hit a deer or something.
Yeah. So, but yes, yeah. So we're gonna work you in. So, Rebecca, basically, you're talking about kind of like the idea
Right.
that like we had to stop people from kind of like moving off in the wrong direction, right?
Right. I think so. For like the church I go to, it's, he says it like this. He's like, you can sin every day and you're still saved.
Mm.
Now, do you want to use up that sin card like a credit card and just keep swiping it and just be, expect it? Absolutely not. I mean, at some point, you're going to have some sort of morals to kind of stop. It's what you learn from. So I like it. He teaches it from a point of, how are you going to do better as a person? How are you going to do better? So the church I go to, it goes into that, and he doesn't. And for him, like, he ends it and he says, you don't have to raise your hand. You don't even have to get back put in water. He was like, if you just say this prayer and you have that relationship with Christ, you're saved.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't, he doesn't want, if you don't want to show it, you don't have to. Of course, he wants you to show it, because the more people who know that you're a Christian, the more the word gets out there that, hey, we're not all bad, if that makes any sense. But I could be rambling.
Yeah, 100%. So, I'm gonna hit the pause button for a moment. We do have a little ritual. This is definitely not anything akin to the holy sacraments or anything like that. But we do have a bottle that we usually open up on the broadcast. So this is Washington Hills Cabernet.
Got it in a different place this time.
Yes,
down in New Hope.
We got it for, well, technically the place was in Lambertville, right?
Lambertville.
And this is from Walla Walla, Washington. So
Walla Walla.
Again, Rebecca, I don't know if you're a drinker, but we always open a bottle of wine. We are not
expensive.
Yeah, we're not bougie, so this is not like anything more than like
bougie. I love that word. That is like my favorite word. So one time I posted a fake Prada purse on Instagram, and I said I was bougie on a budget. And boy, you would have thought I made up the coolest word in the world. I was like,
well, that's interesting. So like, as far as like regional dialect in Arkansas, if you're like putting on airs or something like that, what would you call those people that you think were kind of like
bougie?
Yeah, like would you call them bougie, or is there a different word?
No, I still call people yuppies and
yuppies.
You just said that word yesterday for the first time in like years.
The area that we got this bottle of wine from is definitely full of yuppies. I'll tell you that much.
I mean, I was in Memphis the other day, and I was like, I literally texted somebody and I said, well, I found out where the yuppies hang out,
Yeah.
It's like, I found the cool spot in Memphis, like
there's a gastro pub, like End of Elm is a gastro pub.
Oh, it's our
right?
favorite place.
It's our favorite place to go.
We are.
It's like a gastro pub that's right off of a train line that heads direct into the city.
It used to be
the
biggest dive bar.
Like a really get a tetanus shot kind of dive bar.
Oh, we loved it.
Right?
It is definitely bougie and yuppie, but at the same time, they have absolutely amazing food and drink. So,
yeah, I mean, so if you know anything about like Tennessee and Memphis can be a little rough. So I go from the Bill Street area, which is downtown, and it's pretty rough. And then all of a sudden, I'm looking up old used record stores, and then I'm like, all of a sudden I see all these people just standing around, and these women with their Louis Vuitton purses. I'm like, okay. All right, I know I'm in the yuppie zone. Like,
so one of my favorite spots in Memphis, and I can't have it anymore because we don't really eat meat anymore. But one of my favorite spots for ribs is the Rendezvous.
Yeah,
right there in the middle of Memphis. Absolutely fantastic spot. Homemade barbecue
feel like
and
every-
Now
hot
that
sauce.
is barbecue.
Yeah.
That is
I mean,
barbecue.
Yeah.
if you're down that way, everything should be homemade. No.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
yes.
Somebody
you eat-
tweeted me and said, you need to go to Corky's. I'm like, Corky's? That's a chain barbecue foot. Like, who goes to Corky's in Memphis? What the
Yeah.
hell?
The best part of the rendezvous is it's like I think it's in like the alleyway across the street from the Peabody, right? Like the Peabody Hotel,
Did you
right?
say the
Yeah,
Peabody?
yeah.
I said
That's how people in
Peabody,
Massachusetts
no.
say it.
Peabody?
Peabody?
Yeah.
Listen, I think
always
you
get
should
caught
take
between
the
those two.
wine. Take the wine away.
Yeah. the
Peabody.
place with the ducks. That's what it is.
The
place with-
Peabody. Yeah,
Yes,
the
yes.
That's right.
Peabody.
Peabody.
Yeah, but
That's
it's
how I
like-
would say it.
But it's across the street, but it's like in the alley across the street
Mhm.
from the Peabody.
Peabody.
Yes.
Kind of
All
like
right.
puberty.
So we're far afield away from the
I'm
original
sorry, I
conversation.
totally came in late. I have no clue what you were talking
So
about.
let me bring you into the conversation. What was your kind of like background in terms of religion and spirituality? You were brought up with some element of religion within your family life, right? But then you also had that kind of dichotomy where your parents were also spiritual at the same time, right?
Well, my mom's mother
Mm.
was a Polish Catholic.
Yeah.
Who went to church every day,
Mm.
whose best friend was her pastor or whatever, priest. And, she did the whole shame on you.
Oh,
thing
yeah,
that came
yeah.
from the Catholics, I think.
Yes,
I
yeah.
believe I think it came from the Catholics. Yeah, so she was very, and so I think my parents felt they had to get me, baptized. All the way up to confirmation for my grandmother, I think is kind of what everyone with the thought was.
Mhm.
But my parents never went to church. They maybe went on Christmas Eve, like years when I was younger,
Mhm.
because the candles were out
Yeah.
to a church, but they were not. But I think like I had to because of my grandmother.
Mhm.
I got confirmed in stiletto heels and a mini skirt.
What?
Because I was like,
Woohoo!
I'm only doing this for my grandmother.
What part of Jersey are you in again?
Morristown.
Yeah,
like
so
Morristown area.
North Jersey, yes, yeah,
Okay,
not Atlantic
okay.
City.
I'm just saying, I don't know, No, the funny thing is that I've been in New Jersey several times. I actually dated a guy in my early 20s that was from Newark.
That's
Okay.
not far.
Yeah, that's right around the
Mm-mm.
corner.
It's like
Yep.
less than 20 minutes.
Yeah. I used to
Yeah.
go a lot. I've been in New York City a lot. I've been there a lot. Yeah, absolutely.
It's
Okay.
what's funny is most people when you tell them you're from Jersey, they expect you to have an accent like you're from Bayonne. Like, hey, yo, I'm Vinny. I'm from Bayonne. We got a refinery down the street. Hey, what's it go? Like they always think it's like Italians,
really.
refineries, and like factories, right? What's funny is like the vast majority of New Jersey is farmland. Like South Jersey and West Jersey
Yeah.
are all cornfields and cows and stuff like that. But yeah, most
And then-
people just know Jersey because of Newark International or Liberty International Airport that they fly into, and then what they see when they fly over, which is basically Bayonne and Linden and other places that have like
Well,
big
people know like
oil
Jersey
refineries.
City and Hoboken and that kind of stuff.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
We're not far from all
Yeah.
of that. We're northern.
Yeah.
Jersey.
but so what's interesting is you had folks that, especially your mom, like believed in like angels and
yeah.
and these kind of like very spiritual aspects of life that weren't necessarily mainstream Catholic beliefs, right?
No.
And-
They were like Edgar Casey,
Mm,
past lives. They've both been for past life regressions. And
yeah.
They but we had a priest at my mom's at their thing because I felt like just in case, because her mom was so
This is a very interesting question, Rebecca. I pose this to a lot of people.
Okay.
I find a lot of people believe in specific types of religions for that kind of like just in case, like that fail-safe like insurance
in
policy.
case I die.
Like, do you get that impression? I'm like, are there a lot of people that you've come across?
Well,
that were, like,
absolutely, but that's because it's indoctrined into them.
Mm.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. There's always going to be people. Well, I mean, death is, if you think about it, death scares a lot of people. Death doesn't scare me because I feel like I'm going to be part of something bigger. I feel like I'm part of something bigger already. I mean, we're just in this human experience. Like
Mhm.
there's a whole big vast everything around us. I don't know how to say it. I'm moving my hands and y'all can't see that because I'm on camera.
You must also be part
But
Italian, but yeah.
no, it's the Mexican in me, so I like
Yeah.
jump out and talk about everything. I'm like loud and everything. So to me, death doesn't scare me. The way I die scares me, but after I die, it doesn't scare me.
Mm.
But yeah, I think it's indoctrinated to a lot of us. I mean, a lot of people are scared of death and what's going to happen to them.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't really care what happens to me
Yeah.
because
That's
I'm
like
gone. It's like,
that's
you
like
know.
they keep the priests or the rabbis like on call it a hospital, right?
Mm.
Like they're always in the hospice areas and stuff. I feel like that's like, and that might just be more for the living. Oh, at least they had that. I don't know. I mean,
Wait,
well, that and I think and also I think it is the thing is that we don't walk in our own convictions, and I think that's the problem is that we don't own up to it. So, prime example, I'll use myself. I've made tons of mistakes in my life, and when I was leaving my husband, you know, I wasn't happy, and I did start talking to outside my marriage, and my aunt goes, what happened? Because she's like, I never saw y'all together. My husband never did anything with me. And I said, well, started talking to other men. And she goes, all right, well, way to just stand up and she's like, that's brave. A lot of people won't stand up and say, this is what I did.
Yeah.
This is who I am. And so when people are about to die, I think they think that it's their last chance to get that salvation. So, I make peace with it now and I go, okay, I made this mistake. Who am I going to be going forward?
Yeah.
What am I going to do now? How am I going to act now? Where a lot of people don't, if that makes sense.
No, that totally makes sense. What's interesting is whenever I ask that question or whenever we kind of like talk about those aspects, especially when it's end of life stuff, I always forget who the hell said this, but the quote is everyone dies, not many people live, right? And it's the thinking that like, on your deathbed, if you truly don't want to have any regrets, like why would you live a life of either fraudulence or something that at the very least that you couldn't feel comfortable with on your deathbed, admitting that to yourself or to the people around you that you lived, right? Like and it just makes me think of again that commonality, right? If you have a certain set of principles or kind of like perspectives that you live out, regardless of what your religion is or regardless of how you choose to practice, I think most people, if they were able to embrace that, like on their deathbed, they wouldn't be afraid, they wouldn't run for lifeboats, right? Like they would be able to be comfortable with that. And I think a lot of people may choose to have a priest with them because they lived that life and because they were a whatever it was, devout Catholic, or they truly believed in what it was,
I think we hit up the priest,
Yeah.
just in case my mom would have wanted it. We weren't sure, right? Like the Marines were there for my dad.
Yeah.
And the priest was there. And I kind of think sometimes priests have nice ways of saying things, right? I feel like
what was interesting was, like, to your point, Rebecca, it sounds like the parishioner or whoever heads up, the pastor that heads up your church, might have had kind of a similar viewpoint, is that the priest that we had wasn't this kind of like hard and fast, devout Catholic priest, or at least he left the door open to say, like, let's be open and because we didn't
just had a sabbatical, right?
Well, yes, yeah. Actually, he had a sabbatical in Sedona, Arizona. Right?
Which is their favorite place.
Yeah, and talking about kind of like spirituality and stuff, there are these places in the world that just seem to have these kind of like auras about them. And this Catholic priest just so happened to, have just traveled to that area where Jocelyn's parents felt very kind of like drawn to, or at least connected to.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
nice.
So just interesting. I didn't hear your story of is it something you all your life Christianity or something
No,
you found
it
later?
wasn't. No, I mean, it wasn't at all. And it's still pretty new to me now. If you want to know what really introduced it, why I've gotten into it a lot more now and learning more about the Bible is, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Neville Goddard. But
No.
he was I want to say 1950s, 1960s. But he believed in the law of assumption and that God is within all of us.
Mm.
So what we perceive and what we think is going to manifest out into reality. And he has all these quotes from the Bible that literally actually kind of show you that. So take, for instance, the woman who believed if she touched Jesus's cloak, his bloody cloak, she would be healed.
Mm.
She believed it. She believed it. She believed it. She believed it. And she touched his cloak and she was healed. Now, was that a placebo effect? Or was that just something that she just thought would happen? Is that real? Or did she just assume it to be?
Mm.
Because the mind's so powerful anyway. I mean, I love books like The Power of the Subconscious Mind and things like that. And all of it kind of ties in. So you've got the universe, you've got God, you've got everything. So when you think about faith in a whole, you're actually assuming all of these things, right? That you're learning in the Bible. Comes your assumption becomes fact. To you, may not, but that's where the perception goes to somebody else. Because my perception and my assumption of something's going to be completely different than somebody else's. But that's because they're in their own head. They're their own writer and director in the world, and God is in them. Well, if God is in me and I'm my own person, I'm going to create my own reality and bring who I want in it. So I know it sounds crazy, but that's how I'm like,
not at all. I'm go ahead. I know you're kind of like going in on this.
I was thinking of it because one of the things I said, I don't ever want to dictate how my kids believe. Like, I want them to follow their path, whatever finds them, you know.
That's what my parents did.
What my parents did was teach. They gave me a solid foundation in Christianity, which was really like stink bombs in, you know, trying to get out of class most of the time and making fun of the teacher. Like, that was pretty much all it was.
Well, you also went to CCD, right?
CCD until I was like freaking 16 or 17.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about.
Catholic school? Is that Catholic school?
Yeah.
It was it was like after school, or did you do it on Saturdays?
I had to do overnights.
Yeah.
They got the pro-life people in to show us the board. I mean, I just can't even. I have a bad experience with any organized religion. But if my kid chose to go in that direction, I would let them do it. You know, I want them to do what they do. The only thing I said to you in the beginning was they have to believe in something bigger than them. I think that's the only big thing. I think you have to have faith in something bigger, wherever that is.
Yeah.
You know, and whether it be an organized religion or not, you know, or Buddha, or like what we're doing now, like consciousness, right? Like, as long as it's bigger than.
Yeah. Right. Well, to your point, Rebecca, a common theme in our household is when we're talking about like whether it be health, whether it be our kind of like mindset, whether it be how we're kind of like raising our children, that what you just brought up, like whether it's a placebo effect or not, we really don't care if it creates a positive effect, right? Do I care whether or not it's a placebo or not? I know a lot of the people out there will be. I used to be of this mindset. I was, you know, educated in engineering and science, and it was drilled into me that, you know, the placebo effect is not an effect. It's an outlier, right? You can't depend on it, that kind of thing. But from that standpoint, like, it's also appreciable. Like, it's actually measurable, right? Like, it's a thing. So like, you can't just disregard it. And so when you know, whatever kind of belief system you end up adopting or kind of like internalizing, if that produces positive results, who the hell is someone else to tell you like, oh, you're doing it wrong, right? Like, you believe wrong, right?
But that's where the people are the ones who convolute and screw up any type of religion or spirituality. It's the people. I mean, it's not the religion. It's the people who do it.
It's the human
mean,
effect.
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, it's because you want to know what the problem is that we all walk around wanting to be right.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, let's not act like, I mean, it's funny. So my little astrology thing sent me a little tweet today. Not a tweet, but it always texts me during the day, and it said, "You're not a saint." And I was like, "Well, fuck you too. That's great."
Yeah. You were like, yes.
And I thought, well, what the hell is that supposed to mean? Well, obviously, it knew something I didn't. But yeah. So I think the thing is that people always want to be right, and power and greed is a real thing.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a human instinct. Animals have it. We are not far from animals. Let's quit joking ourselves. And the thing is that we can rationalize, and most animals can't. But when we think about lions, think about how they act, right?
Yeah.
Or monkeys, or anything, or any sort of species out there, is that they all want power. It's greedy. Power is greedy. So what happens is that you get people who in the church and churches who get very powerful, very greedy. And that's where you start seeing, I call this one church, it's a huge Pentecostal church. It's beautiful, but I call it Six Flags Over Jesus every time I pass it.
I like that.
It's like, well, then
That's
there's
awesome.
Six Flags. It's like, and on the right, you have Six Flags Over Jesus. Let's continue on. So you just wonder, like, how did the greed get in there? So and then of course there's a church here in town I call the Disneyland of churches, where everybody has to go and take their pictures in front of the fun little selfie places and all that stuff. And everyone's all in everybody's business. So I don't go to that church because it's just like, no, that's just,
I have to say, I could see where some of these churches around us, like what's the Liquid Church?
Yeah.
I could see where they pull in young people. They have freaking bands and they're out there and then they help so much.
So here was something also interesting that was someone that I knew when I was younger. I asked them, like, even if you're not in line with the belief system of the church, or at least you kind of see that the pomp and circumstance is just that, it's just pomp and circumstance. Like, what do you really get from it? And this person really kind of laid it out pretty succinctly. And they were like, it's the community, right? Like that's what I get from the church. I get the community. And regardless of whether or not, like I've led a good enough life to go to the afterlife or whatever, I really don't even care. Like I just care that I have a community of like-minded people that are around me. And it's very interesting in the context of today, because in the context of today, like on this show, we've talked about mass formations. We've talked about things that happened during COVID. We've talked about the fact that a lot of people feel isolated or depressed because they don't necessarily have groups that they that they attribute themselves as being a part of, that have very close relationships. The relationships are extremely superficial. They're extremely kind of label driven. They're not exactly kind of like belief driven, right? And I keep thinking back to that. And I'm like, you know what? That makes so much sense, because regardless of whether or not you think that the mechanics of your belief are correct, right? Like, it makes so much more sense that you're around a group of people that are supportive and loving, and they share some kind of base base, not just beliefs, but core values.
Well, look at what my Aunt Judy, all the people from the church who came out to her funeral.
Yeah.
She had developed she was never really religious, I don't think, like that, until she got cancer. And then she kind of like went into this idea of the church, and she was like, was it a knitting something or other?
Yeah, like a knitting group or something.
A huge group, and they all were they were all there.
Yeah.
And it was like a stone, like a touchstone for her life in the last few years. So, I mean, I get that. I get that. And I think they also, some churches, like they really do great work in the community. I like, it's hard. You and I could not get together the same thing that a local church with people could do for like.
Well, no, man, like we would have to.
We would have
to form our own church. But Is that something that resonates with you, Rebecca? Do you kind of like see that happening true?
I do love the community. The church I picked, the reason why I picked it is because it's not it's not overloaded with a ton of people. Everybody has tattoos and piercings and
We get along.
you know, yeah, I mean, it's just they're just very accepting. They don't. I haven't heard any gossip. So, like some churches you go to, you're going to hear gossip. Just
Oh yeah.
going to. I don't. We don't get. I don't get
Sunday
any of
potluck. Sunday potluck. That table is a good spot for all the
exactly.
gossip.
The pastor is young. He's great. He's young. He's funny. He did a whole series on marriage and dating and sex, and it was funny. I mean, he made it to where you could actually relate to it, and so that's why I picked it. But I also enjoy it because the funniest thing is that I said I would help serve coffee or work the coffee bar, and then they called me and they're like, we really want to ask you to work in children's ministry. I don't have children.
Yeah.
And I literally looked up and I was like, God, are you fucking with me right now? Like, is this like, what are you doing? Like, I don't even understand, But I tell you, it is probably the most rewarding out of everything because these kids are just so loving and so awesome. And, if anything, because we just teach them the Bible and to think positive and to treat people nicely. And, but I just look at them and I just go, man, kids are amazing. They're just so open in their imaginations and then they're so loving.
Yeah.
And then I come back to the real world and I'm like, God, I'm scared for them.
Yeah.
That is until you have 3 children.
Yeah.
Of your own. And sibling rivalry happens.
And then you want to kill them, right?
Yeah.
I really, it's crazy. I don't know why they picked me to do it, but I do love it. And it's taught me a lot. It's taught me a lot of patience. And I've always been good with my friends' kids. They've always loved me, but this has been really good. It's been really good.
Well, the good end of it is like, Sunday or whenever you have your service and you have to, take care of your duties. You get to hand the children back. So
that is a blessing. I'm going to tell you what. They moved me to kindergarten to 2nd grade, and that's a whole other energy.
Yeah, it's like ants on cocaine is basically what it is.
This one, I know you're not supposed to have favorites, but this little boy, he is so loud and he's just he is obnoxious, bless his little heart. But I love him. Like, I got to look at him a lot and give him the eyes, and I'll just kind of do, that they did on Meet the Fockers, and he would like do the eyes, one of his eyes. I had to do that with him a lot, I'm like, listen, like grown-ups are talking.
Yeah. It sounds like you would get along with Piper.
I would totally get along with Piper. And everyone loves Piper when they see her.
So, an anecdote I always kind of like come back to, or I have at least in recent years, is a couple years ago we went out to the one street fair, right? And there were some folks there from a church that were trying to basically share their story and get people to come into the church and whatnot. And we got into a conversation, and having grown up in organized organized religion, which I hope would grow into a revolution, but no. But so having grown up in organized religion, I've actually kind of found that, my belief system lies outside of most organized religions. But like when we were having a conversation, I said, we're going to get to a lot of the same places. We just get there from a different direction, because I'm a very big like natural rights and natural law person, right? And so from the very standpoint of most especially Judeo-Christian religions, when you look at the cause and effect of what would be considered a righteous versus a sinful act, natural law or natural consequences really kind of line up with that. And so I know a lot of people feel like natural law and natural consequences require, some divinity as far as like a creator or an original power in order to put those into effect. I don't necessarily need that, so to speak, in order to like, rationalize it or feel that it exists. But from that standpoint, I think I get to the same the same point as those people, right? Like I get to the same place because I believe that you can observe in nature, if I do X, Y happens, right?
Mhm.
And it's really interesting when you cross that over with most organized religions. A lot of the teachings really just have to do with natural consequences. A lot of them have to do with like, well, if you over imbibe, you end up being a drunk and you have problems, right? Like if you end up basically coveting your neighbor's wife, you end up with drama and things fall apart and your life gets complicated and all this other stuff. Like it's just natural consequences, right?
What I thought was interesting, though, was when you got to the transcendent. I've been waiting for you to find some spiritual kind of something or other.
Yeah.
For a while. And I feel like the transcendental meditation talks to you. The idea of like a consciousness.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily something that's outside of yourself. It's not something, it's like this energetic kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like that talks to you.
So
Right.
let
We
me ask.
just talked about energy. Like it's all energy, no matter what you call it or believe in it. It's all energy and how
Yeah.
you.
So
let
let me ask you, Rebecca, specifically, meditation, is that something that you've kind of like been introduced to or dabbled in?
Oh,
And then
I've been
specifically
doing.
transcendental meditation.
I've been doing meditation. It's hard for me though because I have ADD, so my brain is all over the place.
Okay.
So I have to do guided ones where, like, so one of them, kind of, it'll say focus on the word trust, and it'll say just focus on the word trust. See that, see it in your mind, and clear your mind and only see it. So it's very hard for me to do, but
Mhm.
I've gotten better at it. So it's like trying to stop all those thoughts so that I can get in and just be.
You
To
got to try
trust myself.
transcendental
That
meditation.
that
It's made for you. It's made for you.
that is my meditation in the morning. Like I can tell you, so like we meditate twice a day, transcendental meditation, without kind of like speaking too much about it, because it's like
Oh,
it's
you're
this,
like lip sealed.
yeah,
You
it's
can't. You're not
supposed to be
allowed.
something that's taught from mentor to teacher. So like you can't necessarily talk too much about it in the open, but we meditate twice a day, and I can tell you that my morning meditation is exactly what you're referencing. It is, I'm thinking about what I have to do for the day. I'm thinking about what I didn't do yesterday. I'm thinking about whatever.
The kid who
Like,
walked in the room.
yeah, like the kid who walked in the room
Cat.
and the cat that I need to throw out the door and all kinds of other stuff. Like all the evening meditation typically is much better because for some reason I've cleared all that junk out of the way. Like, so to
Yeah.
speak.
But it is definitely I think most people would say I had ADHD.
What I like about
I do
it
too.
is what I like about it is when you're being taught it, one of the underlying ideas is like you're not supposed to get down on yourself. Like if you do have one of those meditations
It
where
is
you
what it
close your
is.
eyes for 20 minutes and it's just like your brain is just like and then
It's all good.
it's okay. That's just the way it was supposed to be. Like
Yeah.
So it's like
I appreciate that.
It's the I have been on a spiritual journey for many years. I've done moving meditations, I've done guided meditations, I've done like chanting meditations, I've done hot yoga, all of it. And I've never been able to meditate before I started
Y'all, I
transcendental
just got sorry to
meditation.
break in. My mom just texted me and said, "Watch your mouth." So obviously she's listening.
That's okay. We don't want to get in trouble with mom.
Right? Exactly. That's funny. She's always saying, "Rebecca."
Yeah. But I also find a very interesting parallel between meditation and prayer, right? So a lot of folks that are people of more kind of like structured faith use prayer, I find, in a very similar way as people that use meditation or vice versa.
I was never a prayer person.
No. Are you someone, Rebecca, where like you'll not just pray for a couple of seconds, but like you'll dedicate 5, 10, 15 minutes to prayer, or is that something
I'm
that doesn't
not.
really kind of like seep in?
I don't. I don't really just stop and pray.
Mm,
I don't really sit there and go, okay. So again, my belief is different than anybody else. I believe that God is in me. but he's with me all the time. So I talk to myself. I talk to my higher self that he's with me. So I talk to my higher self and I'm like, okay, you know, and of course, you know, if somebody needs prayer, I'll say, you know, please watch over, you know, so and so. But I'm not a sit and devout prayer. No, I'm not. That's just not my style.
Yeah.
It's not something I do.
I have to say, I've always been a little bit in awe of people in mosques that do like on the rugs and like they surrender their body to the earth. Kind, you know what I'm talking about? Like they're down and in that position. I've always been in awe of that. And that like surrender to that. That's always
there's a rhythm to it. It has always struck me as something that is very analogous to meditation or some kind of
like
daily
Sufi
ritual
dances or something.
Yeah, like
I don't know.
But so from that standpoint, it's like again, this is kind of like talking about those commonalities, or at least the overlap that happens amongst people that are of different faiths or kind of like different perspectives on existence or spirituality. There are these things that are kind of like they fulfill the same space, right? They might be a different they're like a different execution of them, right? But at the same time, they kind of fulfill that same place. And so I think some people, you know, might pray, some people might do yoga, some people might take a walk alone in the forest. So like all of these different things kind of like fulfill the same purpose almost in people's lives, in terms of like whether it be self introspection or even, you know, what's the opposite of introspection? Like outrospection, extrospection, you know, looking inward versus looking outward, that kind of thing. And there's a level of absolutism in some people that I think works against what could bring people together, because I think there's a level of exclusivity that some people within certain religions, and to your point,
like
Rebecca,
yoga.
To your point, Rebecca, like they want to be right. Like I believe right, you believe wrong, right?
Or
like
this
that
is
kind
the
of
right
thing.
way, that's the wrong way.
Yeah,
like that whole.
Yeah. And I think that just kind of gets in the way of what could be something that's unifying. You know, I mean, like,
But isn't that the human element, the greed of it, because you want, right? Like you want to stake your claim to.
It could be greed. It could be, you know, who knows? I mean, I was raised being told that, like, you know, the select few who were saved would be the ones who go to heaven, right? And so that is a that is a small subset of the billions upon billions of people that have lived throughout time, right?
I know, and then who are we to say who's going to go to heaven and who's not? You know, that's the thing. Is that's what I think people are realizing now, and I think that's what's turned so many people away from a Christian-based religion.
Yeah,
because you know, who are we to do that when it's really not our call? It's really not our.
And for years, I think Christianity kind of had some opinions on things that were just very harsh, you know, like on gay marriage or
I think
that kind of thing.
I think it's become very. I also think it's become very co-opted. I think that organized religion, in a certain extent, has become very exclusionary and segregatory. Is that even words? I'm just making up words today.
Because you should write them down.
Segregatory or you know, segregationist. I think it's drawing these artificial lines between people when really, you know, a lot of folks probably believe very similar to you. They just might do it in a different way, right? And so are you, Rebecca, are you familiar with Mark Passio at all?
No, I'm not.
So Mark is an anarchist, and Mark does a lot of talks from a very religious or spiritual standpoint. And he talks about this kind of like, you know, push and pull, or he might even call it a war between good and evil, right? He actually spent time in the Catholic Church. He spent time in the Satanist church. He's spent time in a lot of these different kind of religions across the spectrum. And he really talks about some of these things from the standpoint that a lot of people truly don't they don't understand really like you were talking about history, right? Like religion has a lot of history to it. The historical progression of some of these religions is also extremely interesting and telling about.
Some of it's awful.
Well, it could be awful. It could be from the standpoint of these power struggles that happen between, I mean, you're a liberty minded people, like, people have vested interests in power along with religion sometimes, and that causes the religion to shift. Or I'm like, just look no further than the Church of England and how that came about versus the Catholic Church within
Yeah.
the United Kingdom and the
I
English Empire.
love the story of the Church of England. I
Yeah,
mean, come on. He just wanted a divorce.
yeah. Exactly, right.
I mean, let's get that straight. I mean, he just wanted a divorce. I mean, I
Yeah.
love that entire, but I love history. So I mean, I guess when we first started the podcast, is that history is so embedded. There's so much history in any religion you look at,
Mm.
you
Oh,
know.
yeah, totally. It has like a heartbeat to it, almost like,
Yeah.
or like, a lifeline, um so let me ask you this. So how does your kind of progression in your faith and your spirituality translate into your viewpoint as far as, liberty or freedom, or kind of like you
Oh,
maybe.
it's never going to interfere with, I mean, we all deserve basic human rights.
Mm,
I remember being in college in sociology and looking at this, and I've always been, like I said, from the get-go, my parents let me have a very open opinion about things, and I was probably the only girl in school that was glad when the South lost the Civil War, in class. But because I just feel like I've always believed in basic human rights. I don't know where that's come from. It's not like it was embedded in me from my parents.
mhm.
I don't have liberal parents. Well, my dad was an independent. I did learn that from him. But my mom is very conservative. I mean, she still has MAGA on her damn profile on Twitter. I'm like, can you take that off? like, can we take that down now? You know? But it really hasn't, because if you look at other aspects of the Bible, what Jesus says is that you always forgive. And who am I to forgive somebody for? Why do I have to forgive somebody for living their own life? It's their basic human right.
Mm,
And then he also says, wash their feet. Jesus washed their feet. He mingled with prostitutes. He mingled with druggers. Like he didn't single anybody out.
yeah.
It's us. It's like I said. It's us, the humans that are destroying the religion.
So
And
so that actually really factors into kind of that interplay that I see with natural law and natural consequences. It's that it was embodied in so many things, specifically the stories within the Bible, right? The idea that something might be viewed as negative or sinful or something like that doesn't necessarily mean that that person needs to be thrown away, right? They suffer the consequences of their own choices or their own actions, right? Um,
absolutely.
and they should come to expect that, right? Like they shouldn't expect something different of bad behavior, right?
Mhm.
Or not necessarily bad behavior, but behavior that is more than likely to result in a certain result. And so, but at the same time, you had someone who was essentially saying, well, you don't forsake those people, or you don't throw them away. You try and, bring them a new option, right? I'm like, how many times do I use the phrase, like, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right? Like you basically can introduce these ideas to someone, but you can't force it upon them, because if you do that, even if they acquiesce or something like that, they're never going to believe it, right? Like they're never going to internalize it. Um, and so it quite often, like, I don't necessarily get there from a standpoint of a religion, but I get there from a standpoint of just natural consequences. And if you engage in something, you are more than likely to get this result. Um, and it seems to cross over. But I think it's very interesting how puritanical some people can get about their religious beliefs. I mean, old school Catholics,
Polish
are
Catholics.
yes, yeah, are
Really
very
every day, aren't they?
puritanical,
Very
right?
every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
Southern
I mean,
Baptists are
yeah.
horrible. I mean, here's what I always say is that even people who don't believe. Okay, let's just go into a little political right now. Everything is you have to accept, you have to accept.
Mm.
We don't have to accept anything that's put in front of our face.
Oh yeah.
You don't have to accept that. We just don't. You don't have to accept religion. You don't have to accept that. But you can respect somebody's view of not wanting to accept it. Does that make sense? Does that
Yes.
make any sense? Like,
Uh-huh.
What?
You can respect
you can respect it.
you can respect someone's
absolutely.
decision not to accept it or not to go along with it. Yeah.
And I think that's what
no
we're doing.
judgment, right? That idea of like, you do you, I'll do me. Let's just not hurt each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be such a perfect world. But
right?
So I mean, what's funny is that I don't know. I have trans friends. I have gay friends. I've had parents come to me 3:00 in the morning crying. My daughter came out. What do I do? And I said, well, how did you react? And she's like, well, I let her talk. And I said, well, first, it's like, my first thing to her was, first of all, you're going to have to let your feelings come out because you're allowed to have a feeling about it.
Mhm.
First, allow yourself to have a feeling about it. Don't let your daughter see it, but allow yourself to have a feeling about it so that you guys can rationally talk about it, because she accepts her daughter and loves her daughter. She's like, I just knew you'd be the only person I could really come and talk to about this, right?
Mm.
I'm like, so you got to let those feelings come up, and you're going to have to talk to her like I do my trans friend. It's like, not everybody is going to accept the choice that you made, and you have to be okay with that. So not everybody accepts that I'm a Christian. They automatically think I'm a racist or I'm a bigot, all these things,
Well, you're from Arkansas. I mean, like, so that's just
Jesus, I know, God. God, like, God, you're from the South. You're automatically racist. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trust me.
It is interesting how Christians have had a bad rap especially since the whole Trump thing. I feel like there's
no.
It
started way before that. No.
Oh,
it
absolutely.
got really bad with that.
No, and I think liberals are or not necessarily liberals, because that word has been co-opted or abused and stuff like that. Specifically, leftists have also suffered the same problem. So like they've allowed, or they haven't allowed, but the groups that are most extreme among the Christian faith. So take the Westboro Baptist Church that pickets gay funerals and stuff like that, right? Those folks have been highlighted by the people that are essentially the enemies of the Christian right, as to make you think that is basically the garden variety average Christian, right? And then the people that are on the right end of the spectrum have used the crazy cuckoo atheist types to make you think that those are the average garden variety, atheist, agnostic kind of person, right? And it gets to the point where you're basically talking past each other, because truthfully, at the end of the day, there are way more commonalities than there are things that separate us. Now, every single one of us are individuals, and we're all unique. But at the same time, when you look at some of these things like we've been talking about, whether it be prayer versus meditation, whether it be faith versus, how you kind of see, whatever it is, astrology or something like that. However those things manifest within your life, they're not that much different. You might call them different, or the mechanism might be different, but the people are not that different. It's just you're all kind of searching for the same thing.
It's like I spend money at the bookstore, whereas someone else spends money at church. They both get us off, right?
Now,
Bookstore church.
I appreciate the fact that you didn't attack me by saying that you spend money at the bookstore and I spend money like on electronics. So I appreciate that. But,
but like people spend money in their church community.
Yeah.
Because that's like that gets them off in their own way. I mean, not in a bad way to say that, but like, right. So I love a bookstore.
Well,
so that I spend it in subscriptions to magazines.
I don't know if I would phrase it that
journals.
way. that
but it's like
exhilarates
meditation.
you. Okay. That
it's
exhilarates
like, it's something that feeds me.
Yeah.
Right? Like books and pages.
You're going to get Rebecca in trouble with her mom, by the way, who's watching.
No.
But right, it's not that different. It's like whatever your church be.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting.
I think that we're going to have radicals, and no matter what there is,
yes.
we're going to have radicals. And I'm going to just throw this out there because, all right, let's talk about the gay trans community. I love them, right? Have a lot of them, a lot of friends that are gay and trans. One of my trans friends is very religious, knows a lot about religion, has a lot of bad things that they can say about it, a lot of good things that they can say about it. Have a gay friend in Houston who's about to get married, and he is a very Catholic. He is Mexican Catholic. So if it's Roman Catholic, would it be him? But he does not like the way that his community is projected at a lot of these parades, at a lot of these shows. There's radicals all over the place. It doesn't matter. I mean, there's going to be a radical somewhere. Okay, we like guns, right? We're gun owners. We support the Second Amendment. I love it. You don't see me out there.
If you're looking in the background, I kind of love guns, but
you don't see me out like waving my guns around. I'm not a radical. I'm not going to be running around with the NRA at a school after a school shooting in that town saying let's support gun rights. No, I have more respect for the human, what they're going through at that time, what a community is going through. So, it's not just the Christians that are radical, but if you want to know some really good documentaries that'll open up your mind a little bit, Netflix has a ton of them on Mormonism. And I've never in my life realized what the polygamy and things like that have done to that community. It's amazing because they've almost glamorized it with like, what is that, Sister Wives, that show Sister Wives?
Big Love. Big Love was the one on HBO, right?
Big Love, but I think Sister Wives
Sister
Wives
all do
is
it together.
Sister Wives is on TLC, and it's a reality
that was like
show.
A big program a while ago.
And
Big Love was like one of the big ones.
So they've like glamorized it, right? Just like they're glamorizing so many things, like My 600-Pound Life. I can't stand that show. It just irritates the shit out of me. I won't even watch it because it's like I think she's beautiful. I think she's great, but I just
it's ironic that or not ironic, it's tragic that we've lived through this period of time in pop culture where, starting with the Real World and some of these other shows, it's basically considered kind of like real life TV, right? Like it's considered filming real life, and it's complete BS because it's not real life. It's produced and it's people overacting, and it's focusing on the extreme. It's not focusing on the average.
But I think that stuff with the Mormons, like the Sister Wives and the Big Love, those have an appeal to women because women way back when we were tribal. We were like,
I
don't have that.
I gotta be honest. Like, okay, so the idea of having multiple wives, like most men at the onset,
I'm not saying I want multiple wives.
At the onset, most men would be like, yeah, like I could father children with multiple women, stuff like that. I gotta be honest. As someone who's been married twice now, and specifically married for an extended period of time with my current wife. I cannot imagine what it would be like having to balance like 2, 3, 4, 5 wives. Like, not to mention the fact that like you're talking, Rebecca, about how it is not a glamorous thing. It is a life a life or a lifestyle that's built off of like a hierarchy where it's not like,
But I think
everyone gets along and has a good time and stuff like that. It's just not that.
But the reason it gets
No,
glamorized
exactly, it's
is
not.
because that's something women are missing in their relationships and stuff.
Oh,
I
that's
think
it. That's an interesting thought. So
That is interesing.
the
I don't
idea
know.
that
I don't
women...
want to. I don't want another bitch.
I don't know. I don't want
to
another relationship.
I've got enough personalities to one man can't handle. So this one guy who like has been trying to talk to me, like trying to date me here in town. He says, so tell me something interesting about you. So I went into politics and everything like that, and he goes, "Oh, you're quite complex." I'm like, "Oh, I guess that's what you can say."
Do you run into I'm not familiar with the area of Arkansas that you're in, but do you run into kind of like some of that conflict where men are looking for like the more trad wife type women versus someone who's like type A and go-getter and that kind of thing?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I literally was told the other day that, because I have an opinion and voice my opinion, that a man's not going to want to be with me. Because I just sit there. And I'm like, well, I can't be with another man like that, because the man I was married to, he hated that I would speak my opinion in group settings.
Oh,
He would look at me like, stop, just be quiet. Yeah. I wasn't allowed to have an opinion. So he didn't like going and doing things with me with a group of people, because if something got brought up that I didn't agree with, I'm gonna say something, and he didn't like that. So yeah, I was told just the other day that that's would be probably why it's going to be hard for me to find somebody.
Next. Next.
I thought, oh wow, because I feel like I always argue with people very respectfully. I never, leave an argument, or just because we don't agree on something doesn't mean I'm going to disrespect you. But
yeah,
yeah. So it is different. It is hard, because I'm not a docile woman, I guess you could say, where I'm just, going to just lay down and take whatever a man has to say.
No, that's good. I think that I believe, whether or not it had a place or not in culture, 100 or 200 years ago, I think has been something that has been outmoded, even if it did have a purpose back then, right? Like, not that I would necessarily say that it didn't have a purpose back then, but I would say, like, whatever, circumstances might have been different, right? Nowadays, it makes sense for women to view themselves as equals, because there's not that much of a difference on average. And I'm not saying that like men and women aren't different, but what I'm saying is, as far as like being a human being, there's not that much of a difference between men and women. And I think sometimes religion or even spirituality gets contorted to try and wind back the clock, right? Like to try and pull things back into that old world kind of thing, which, by the way, is an assault of leftists, where they say, oh, well, they want to put women back in this kind of like, Handmaid's Tale kind of,
at the same
time, I don't believe that.
Yeah, and there's lots of women who want to be home and be a mom, and
that's fine. That is like,
that's fine.
That's freaking amazing.
Yeah,
like,
and there's women who want no kids, and there's no one way to do it,
right?
And I think no matter what way you go, women get.
I got to be honest. I have a real problem with dads wanting to use the breastfeeding thing.
That's a little weird
for their babies. That's just messed up. Like,
just use a bottle.
I draw the line there. Right, like that is.
But you baby wore.
No.
Well, no, I'm not saying you breastfed. Your baby
stop,
wore it.
stop accusing me of things I did not do.
I said
No.
your baby wore it.
I carried a baby.
Yes.
I held the baby close. Yes, yeah. There was no suckling of
No,
fake
that's just weird.
boobs with milk in it.
You're back on Meet the Fockers.
Yeah. I have nipples. Can you milk me? No, like there's definitely some perversions too, where this thing is like, you know, there's like some guardrails, and then stuff goes way outside the guardrails, which, as long as like it's a fringe kind of thing where it's not become commonplace, all right, fine, like, you know, express yourself or push the limit, so to speak. But when it starts to become this like common thing, then you got to be like, whoa, hold on, Tex. Like, we got to pull this back to a more.
Are you talking about the pregnant emoji, the pregnant male emoji?
Well, yeah, that too. But I'm like,
I don't know what you're talking about.
No, I'm more so talking about
the breastfeeding,
like stay-at-home dads who feel like they like.
Oh, they have to do everything.
You know, they're jealous of moms being able to nurse their kids. Like,
oh, yeah. I've never heard of that. Wow.
That's no, that it's like it might just be like a Northeast and West Coast kind of thing, but.
I didn't know that.
I've never met anyone. I have an interesting question though, off of the whole Meet the Fockers kind of thing.
Okay.
I am on a track now, just kind of trying to trace back misogyny. I'm trying to like, I feel like everyone talks about racism, ageism, everyone talks about all this stuff. And in my own mind, I'm kind of like flying backwards and kind of tracking misogyny. I think it's only snowballed. I don't think it's gone away at all.
Let me ask you, hold on, before Rebecca responds, let me ask you a question. What would you consider misogyny?
That's a very important
question.
I'm going to just say the hatred of women, the pushing down of women, you mean, do I have to define women?
No.
Okay.
I know what a woman is.
Right. Like the pushing down and the yeah.
Well, do you know what a woman is?
Yeah,
I do. But like, you know, I feel like misogyny. So you can trace it all. I mean, it's so far back. I think originally though, like you'd have to go past patriarchy all the way back. But like, you know, I think I hate the words like patriarchy and matriarchy. I'm not a big fan of either of them, but you know, everyone wants to say what's going on now. They don't ever mention misogyny, ever. And I feel like at the core root of everything that's going on is like a sense of misogyny when I look at it. And I wonder how many of those roots are placed in religion. And that's a totally big question and random. And
that is big. But you know what? The Bible tells you for a man to treat his woman like a diamond. And he also says to put your wife before your children, because your kids leave. They grow and leave, and you have to keep your marriage sacred.
Well, that's the thing though about the Bible, is the words can be used however anyone wants to use them. I feel like everybody kind of uses their words for different things, right?
That's
how you interpret it.
How you interpret it. So it just all depends. You know, honestly, all the guys I meet, I don't want a man to look at me as his complete equal. I want to be his partner, but I'm made to be different from him. For me, I'm made to be different from him because we're supposed to bring out the strengths in each other. So if he's my equal, I might as well be with a vagina. Okay? Like
I feel like it goes back. And one of the things that brought this whole thing up for me was the Roe v. Wade thing. And I was looking around, and all of these women were calling, not exuberantly, but what's the word? Excitedly. What's the word I'm thinking?
Well, what's interesting is
enthusiastically.
Yeah, you're like to. I'm gonna mansplain this right now.
And I'm okay with that.
What's interesting is you're looking at this from the standpoint of you actually think that feminism, the pendulum has swung not back to equality, but to a level of insanity well past equality, where now all of a sudden women are relishing in or reveling in. There was actually a video the other day that was shared online of women talking about fetishizing abortion,
Oh
right? Like
gosh.
the
Well, like
right, like,
that's just sick.
and so what I'm saying is, it sounds
I
like
don't
what you're
think I
talking
don't
about is
understand. I hate that they overturned Roe versus Wade, because a woman's right to have a child or not have a child is her right, and you don't know what the circumstances are, and we don't have to know. That's the thing. That should be her right to decide what she wants to do there. But I've seen it too, where women are making it. It's almost like a mockery of it. Like
I wouldn't. I mean, what got me was
it's disgusting.
women enthusiastically calling for the murder of babies.
Yeah,
Wherever you sit
exactly.
on Roe v. Wade doesn't matter to me. Like that's, but just
Twerking,
the witness.
twerking for it. Twerking
Right.
for it was what was getting me. I
Yeah,
was
the
like, can
witness
you
to
make
this.
yourself like you're not going to be taken seriously? This is you're being disgusting. Like it's not a birth control. Like you're not only
Right.
ending a human life, but you're also hurting your own body every time you do something like that.
well, so the discussion we had on this, the position I took was, I think the decision needs to be made as close as possible to the people that are most directly affected, right? So that
Hmm.
relies with the mother, it relies with the child. There is some input from the father, right? And maybe, and this is a big asterisk, maybe the local community. I don't think the state government, I don't even think the county government should have any say in it, right? Like, I think,
Nobody should have a say in it,
right?
but like you said, the closest people involved.
Exactly. It should be like a family or very close community based decision. So the what's funny is, within the liberty community, the debate then happens once the Supreme Court ruling comes down. Now everyone's like, oh well, the federal court was basically righting the injustice of what the states were doing, right? And then other people were celebrating it because they were like, oh fantastic, it goes back to the states, we're now getting closer to, that local decision making process. And it's this crazy kind of world where the tyranny of the government has essentially taken people that normally would have seen things exactly the same way, that would agree with you and I, that decision making process needs to happen as closely as the people that are affected as possible, and it's now pitted people against each other that have the same viewpoint, right? Like the Supreme Court ruling was said to be like pushing it back to the states, and people were on opposing sides thinking it was a good thing or a bad thing, when at the end of the day, like, however you get back to that point of view of the most local decision is the ideal scenario, right? Um, and what's crazy is there is this impact of culture, religion, politics, economics, all that
In that
seep
one
into this
little thing.
one thing. And it's not just that, like it's everything else. It's the gun debate, it's the it's taxes, it's everything that seeps into it. And it's really messed up that we have a system where people that otherwise would see eye to eye on a lot of these things end up pitted against each other because they're arguing some nuanced position within it, but ultimately they all want it to go to the same exact spot. Like, I truly believe that most people do not want to pay taxes. At the
Hmm.
same time, you get people that are fighting amongst
Right.
Well,
themselves.
I think
Well,
a
good and
lot of
which are
it
bad.
too. Well, a lot of it too was the reason why they pushed it out is, I think, because what is the Supreme Court? What is it for? It's really to protect the Constitution, our constitutional rights, right?
I
So,
would
like,
we can get into a constitutional debate on that one. I would actually argue that the Supreme Court's position is to make sure that the actions of the federal government are constitutional,
mhm.
right? So, like,
So I can see why they pushed that back to the states then.
yeah,
I mean, I can see why. I mean, but so you can see why, logically, why they would have pushed that back to the states.
yeah.
That's
But again, I can also see the other side of the argument where people say, well, my state is whether it be because of religion or whatever it is that's kind of guiding the people that are the elected officials are anti allowing choice, right? Like I can see that argument as well.
I can too, but you know what mine is that educate yourself and get
Mm.
out there and start educating other people and actually get involved in your local politics and quit just paying attention to the federal. We have more people who will just vote for the president of the United States, but will do nothing in their local towns, local communities, or state, and they don't realize they all play a part together. That's how democracy is supposed to work.
Yeah, that
Okay.
I preach, because that's something that has
We're
now
going to be going to our local whatever state congress
now that being
sometime soon.
That being said, as someone who has the very mindset of kind of more agorism, where I choose to like try and find my way outside of government control, for those people who choose to be vocal or involved in government, just being vocal is not enough, at least in terms of like, voicing your discontent. So from your point, Rebecca, yes, 100%. If you're one of those people within the Libertarian Party who is, anti that, or if you live in a state that's a red state that decided to take this Supreme Court ruling and use it as impetus to then, change choice and stuff like that within your state, then your recourse is not just angry tweets, right? Like your recourse is
Right.
actually to get involved.
Get out there and do something. And that's I think I tweeted that as soon as it happened, because the trigger law went in effect in Arkansas. As soon as that went in effect, they canceled abortion appointments that were made for that day, because that law went into effect. And it doesn't matter if you're raped or incest or anything, like you can't have it.
Diary of a Modern Caveman said, "Liberty's the worst about going after local politics where they could have meaningful impacts." Look, regardless of whether or not you see eye to eye with him, Tom Woods wrote a book called Nullification, which is the most amazing book I've ever read in my entire life, because if you are one of these people that have the mindset that you want to go the political route, you can literally take a town council and nullify state and federal laws. Like if you want to, you can truthfully go to a town council, and as long as you have enough votes, you can push back against federal and state laws. I mean,
but
you've
people
already seen,
and unfortunately, people they don't know that.
Yeah, they don't get the power that they have.
We don't educate people, and that's what I guess, because let me just tell you, like I told you, I love history, right? Well, I took like literally just history and civics classes all through high school and college just to take them because it fascinates me. But people are not knowledgeable in it, and we don't educate the public. But I think honestly that the government wants it that way, because the more ignorant we are, the more power they have.
Oh yeah.
That's what I miss. That's what I miss about having my dad around. Like talking to him about what he knew about the wars and his experience as a veteran.
Yeah.
I think like maybe that's what history in school should be, like people coming under that. Now you don't have a lot of people, like they had like one of the last World War II veterans who was like died, right? Like you don't have it so much anymore, but like bringing people in and just like when I had history class, I fucking hated it. I would watch them like they roll in the TV and play the black and white movie on the VHS tape or something, right? And you would know you'd be taking a nap that period.
Yeah.
Right. And then you know you had to memorize 3 paragraphs to have a test tomorrow on it. And then you could forget everything, you know?
So
that's
like
hilarious.
Here's the other aspect.
I took an elective class called War Zone in high school, and it was elective, and it was all about war, Vietnam, the World Wars. Like I loved it.
What position did it take on war? Did it talk about both sides, or was it?
Oh, it did. It was amazing. And just like, it's so funny is I love it whenever people, I was talking to my friend in Europe about this actually. Well, she's in the UK, and we were talking about history, and we were talking about, she goes, does Biden really know what's going on over there? And I said, I really don't. I don't know. I don't know. Bless his heart. I don't know. She goes, he just seems so confused, because they're
Mm,
seeing what we're seeing. And we started talking about dictatorships and fascism and how they always say the right is they're fascist. The right's fascist, they're all, and I'm like, we're far from that. But anyway, where I'm going with this is we started talking about Hitler in Germany,
mm,
but a lot of people don't realize the state the country was in when Hitler actually took power.
yeah.
They were from the Treaty of Versailles. It was they were in such desperation.
Weimar
They were
Republic. Yep.
they were burning money just to stay warm. Like
Yep.
they didn't and money had no value. They would have taken anything at that time
Mm,
just to get had that treaty. It killed Germany. I
mm.
mean, it killed them. And, I was like, so I told her, I said, I said, but people don't understand that. We kind of put them in that position. We almost, I mean, in our own way, because we were part of World War I, we put them in that position, but we don't take responsibility for it. And we don't teach that. All we taught was Hitler and the Holocaust, and Hitler did all these bad things.
That is like, like we talked about the Civil War earlier, talking about World War II. Like we can talk about Vietnam, which Jocelyn's father was involved in,
Yeah, but he
Korea.
just knew so much.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
so from that standpoint, if you talk to people that were actually involved in this thing,
How much cooler would history be?
well, not necessarily,
I would love
not
it.
necessarily just cooler, but you would also understand that
Viewpoint.
these things are not simple, cut and dry, good and
No,
bad situations,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Like anyone who thinks that Lincoln was a choir boy is wrong, right?
Thank you.
And anyone who thinks that Hitler was bent on world domination right from the very beginning doesn't understand how he got his start, right? Like
Right.
anyone who thinks Putin bad, Ukraine is getting taken advantage of, doesn't understand the current circumstances of that conflict. They don't get the interests of other countries that are baked in and things like that. So the
Oh,
nuance of history is
even the
important.
Civil War here, they don't talk about it. It was money. It was
Mm,
political. It was money. It was economic. That's what it was. It
yeah,
wasn't about freeing anybody because, yeah, that was part of the thing. You didn't leave the Union, but you couldn't have slaves. But guess who still had slaves? The North.
yeah,
But for some reason, people would just want to say the South hated black people. They wanted
yes.
the slaves. No,
It's
honey.
it is crazy how many people have become. I mean, like we're adamant homeschoolers, and the reason why is because we want our kids to get that nuanced view of things. We don't want our children to get some kind of rote, textbook version of history or textbook version of anything from that standpoint. Um, and yeah, it's really kind of disconcerting that so many people have almost kind of like devolved their perspective into this very black and white view of life
Well,
or
it was taught to us in
history.
black and white.
Well, it was.
But
Yeah.
no, but I mean, like, how many times do I go to you? Oh my God, was World War I in 1920? Like, I have no clue. I remembered timelines at one point in my life, but now all I remember the excerpts that people told me in person. Like, I can't read it unless I read a novel that's based in history that like has a lot.
Oh,
so like
ne-
Alice Hoffman wrote a beautiful piece about the Jewish about being in Israel and all the, and I remember that stuff because it was told like a story to me. But I'm still gonna ask you in 20 years, when was World War
Oh no!
II?
Next week we have Shane Hazel on, and he and I are going to talk anti-federalism, and then we'll talk about whether or not we actually should have been in World War II, which might get our YouTube channel nuked, by the way.
Ooh.
But
Definitely gonna have to pay attention to that one.
yeah, but so like I like that really speaks to the point of like whether it's history or whether it's math or whether it's religion and these things. What's the saying? History is written by the victors, right?
Mhm.
That's the other thing that people have to understand is
Now there's
tons
so
of these
many.
historical accounts are written by people that essentially executed patriots and killed people that fought for freedom, right? Like we're lucky to be in one of those countries where the patriots back in, the late 1700s actually won, right? Like, but that being said, that doesn't mean the fact that our history books haven't been rewritten over the last, 250 some odd years, based off of
But see,
who was in power.
that's not to go back to my old point, but that's why I like Outlander. Now I've learned about the Scots.
Oh my God. Do you watch Outlander, Rebecca?
I do not, but I used to like
Please
Quantum
do.
Leap.
Yeah.
Please do.
It's
so good.
First of all, it's risque.
It's
Okay,
very risque, but it's so good.
it is based off
okay.
of a romance novel, but the romance novel is extremely well researched in terms of Scottish history. And
Culloden.
and yes, yeah, it's about the Scottish fight for independence from England. It then follows them to France,
Yes.
and then the United States.
Yep.
As,
And
as
then
they
they're at
kinda, like, go through
this
the
next season
colonization.
is like the Revolutionary War.
Yes,
But
yeah.
but it's such a that's how I don't know if it's just because I'm a woman. Maybe I go back to the whole misogyny. Maybe it's not. But like I want to hear accounts that I can picture and dream in and live in for a minute. And I was fed fucking facts as a teenager when I wanted to just be out dating somebody, or like it didn't. If they had, maybe if Outlander was my my way of
If they
learning history,
romanticized
for teenagers,
Romanticize.
what do you? Yeah, take
Everything,
Twilight.
everything that I hate
infuse
is
it with
like
history.
quit romanticizing it. It's like everything that I am totally against. So,
Yeah.
well, so my dad was Army, so and he loved the History Channel. So, my dad and I would just watch the History Channel. So, like, I grew up just learning about it, and of course, he loved war. Like, he was excited when he got deployed, Operation Desert Storm.
Mm.
He was ready for that call. He was excited about it. Then of course my grandfather and my uncle are Vietnam vets. My uncle lost his legs in Vietnam. Um, my other grandfather fought in the Korean War. Every person on my dad's side of the family all served, Navy, Marine, Air Force, something or other. So military and war is very, I guess, ingrained in me.
Yeah.
Maybe we should be like Israel, where everyone has to do their 2 years. Is
Uh,
that very anti-libertarian?
No, I would actually take the opposite tack, because you got to remember that again, like we live in a Revolutionary War town. So Morristown in New Jersey is one of the areas where Washington actually set up an encampment here in New Jersey during the Revolutionary War. And so every single year they do a reenactment where on the green they read the Declaration of Independence. And Jocelyn actually can't stand bringing me past the reading of the Declaration of Independence, because every year I basically yell, "We have the same problems now." All of the grievances in the Declaration of Independence are all true now. And so, and one of the specific grievances is a standing military, basically giving quarter without consent to military in the United States. And so my biggest piece as an anti-war person, whether it be anarchist or libertarian, is that when you have a well-funded large military organization, you not just causes problems, you have to legitimize it. And so in legitimizing it, you almost have to pick fights to show that you need that expense.
So my dad would always say a draft wasn't, he didn't like the draft, but he would say it's important because you have the people who stood up against it. Like, so the more people if everyone has to do it, do more people become anti-war? Well,
that's a very Vietnam vet-esque kind of perspective. Yeah.
I mean, maybe there's some truth to that.
Yeah. We're Rebecca, were all your family members voluntary enlistment, or did any of them get drafted?
Voluntary. All of them voluntary enlistment. Yeah.
Yeah.
All of them. I was an ROTC actually.
Oh, really? What branch of service?
Air Force.
Okay.
I got in trouble a lot because I was late, but half the time I showed up, I was high, so they didn't even know that.
So. We had on campus. I went to Tulane down in New Orleans, and so on campus we had the the Navy ROTC people, we had the Army ROTC people, which were in the vast minority, and the most of them were all Air Force ROTC. And the reason why is because it was a bunch of Northeastern white liberals that overpaid to go to a Southern school. And so a lot of them wanted like some desk jockey job in the Air Force in order to like say that they served.
That's awesome. Yeah, I loved, you know what? I did like it though. I did like it when I wasn't having to march all the time because I was tardy.
Yes.
That was a pain. That was a pain in
Do
the
you not
ass,
have
you
to go
know.
through boot camp for that?
For the
For
Air Force?
ROTC?
Yeah.
Well, if I went to Air Force, I would have, yeah.
Yeah. If she would. So did you finish school as ROTC or did you?
I didn't. We moved, and well, my parents
I need help.
divorced when I
What
was
is
13.
ROTC?
It's go ahead.
Sorry,
It's
sorry,
just
I don't know.
I don't even know. It's like I don't know what it stands for, but it's basically what teenagers get into to get them ready to enlist.
Yeah.
Oh,
Into the
okay, that
service.
makes sense then.
It's-
I was
I
thinking
think
it
it
was
stands
like
for
the
recruit officer training something. It's essentially a entryway into getting into the military, but
Yeah.
you're not enlisted. So
Okay.
like enlisted, think of like blue collar, like they're going to be the grunts, right? If you go to college, it gives the opportunity to get like a fast track to becoming a lieutenant, depending on
Make
which
more
so
money.
you
branch of
don't have
service
to.
you're in.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I just was like thinking in my head it was the one where they go once a month.
No.
No,
You're
that's
thinking reserves.
Reserves. That's what I
yeah,
was
your
thinking.
reserves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was going to stay in it, but when I moved schools, I would have had to take it at a different school, and it was going to be Army, and I was like, nobody wants to be in the fucking Army. They're stupid. So. You know, they all have that saying, like the smartest are the Marine. Well, no, the Marines are the killers,
Crayon eaters.
Then you got like the Air Force is the smart ones, and the Army's the dipshits. You know.
Yeah.
The Navy's I don't know what the Navy is, but
The Navy guys all sleep together. Apparently, that's
that's exactly what but you know. But it's funny, it's funny is that when I graduated high school, so like I said, all my family, my dad's side of the family, military, they like I don't want to say my maiden name, but they call my name like Rebecca, so and so, and I started going across the stage, and you can't hear nothing but hoorah! I was like, oh my god, did they just hoorah at my graduation? Got to be kidding me right now.
From that standpoint too, like again, like talking about the dynamic with like organized religion or whatever you want to talk about, the idea of community, right? Like people who are hungry for community. I mean, like if you're looking for community, right? Like the military is most definitely a community. I wouldn't like you could argue the merits of what that community is based off of, but if you are someone who is like an at-risk youth, if you're someone who comes from a poor family, or if you're someone who feels like you don't connect with other people, like you are thrown into a group of people that have a similar circumstance in life once you get into that group that you then become a part of, right? Like
that's family. It's your family.
It's and it can have its positives, and it can also be, as we've seen with the United States in multiple situations, can be contorted or misused, or abused, so to speak,
That would probably be where I lean a little, I guess you could say conservative and right, is that I do have a high respect for our military service men and women because a lot of them do voluntarily go, and they are under the thumb of the government. They're going to be the first ones that have to take these vaccinations. They're going to be the first ones that are put on these test things. They're going to be the first ones to walk into fire. They're the first ones that have to leave their families, and not by choice.
This is not a popular opinion, but if less people didn't go into the military, would the government have as much? I guess they would just draft, right?
No, in fact, what's interesting is so the recruitment rates have dropped severely over the last few years, and so much so that a push within the Libertarian Party has been to get the Defend the Guard bill passed, which essentially is, and I don't know if you're familiar with this, Rebecca, but a lot of the states have National Guard.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And then they have
We have it.
then they have active military service. And so if you have a shortage of personnel within the Marines and the Army and the Navy and the Air Force, they will deploy the state National Guard. And so a lot of presidents, namely the last three, have abused the National Guards of many states by having them run active military campaigns over in the Middle East. Whereas the National Guard is technically, their main goal is to protect the United States and, domestically respond to catastrophes and stuff like that. Part of the reason why Katrina was so bad was because the Louisiana National Guard was mostly deployed overseas. And so what a lot of people don't talk about is the fact that the folks that were enlisted or at least signed up to protect the United States here domestically weren't here. They were being used to, expand oil rights or fight the battle of Saudi Arabia or other countries over in the Middle East when they really shouldn't have been there.
What's the name of that?
Well, it's
Defend
funny
the
that you brought that up, because I was actually trying to look for it while we were talking before. And I'm actually going in September 11th to the state capitol to help defend that with the libertarians here, because my dad was Army Guard. He was Army National Guard. So, like I said, it has a place in my heart.
Yeah, that definitely hits close to home.
Was it? Yeah. He died in 9/11?
No. They're having on September 11th. They're going to rally at the Capitol.
No, but
in the Guard.
In Washington.
He was active National Guard in he was active in Arkansas.
Okay. Let me get Jocelyn on.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're in New Jersey, New York, so 9/11. We know lots of people who.
September 11th, Arkansas libertarians are going to be rallying at our state capitol to defend the Arkansas Guard here.
Oh,
and my dad was Arkansas Army Guard.
That's fantastic.
Okay. So that's defending. That's what you were talking about. That
which, by the way, again,
the Guard.
Coming into these like crossovers and things like that. So having Shane on next week, we'll be talking about anti-federalism and the fact that the Bill of Rights only exists because of the anti-federalists, not because of the federalists who decided that they wanted to store more power in DC than most of the states were willing to afford to a central authority. But the 10th Amendment is essentially the foundation for the Defend the Guard bill.
And Ron Johnson has the 10th Amendment in his in Wisconsin.
He does. So office. So Senator Ron Johnson is one of the guys who was, interestingly enough. So
I just totally changed topic.
Yes. I don't know if you are a watcher, Rebecca, but have you ever heard of the High Wire with Del Bigtree?
Ah, so great.
Okay,
you should watch it.
Yeah, so Del runs a organization called the Informed Consent Action Network, and he's done a lot of work during the COVID pandemic, epidemic, whatever you want to call it, talking about informed consent. He's basically everything that has been listed as disinformation and conspiracy theory. He was out in front of and has since been. Most of it has since been proven fairly credible. But so one of the things that he did recently was he interviewed Senator Ron Johnson, who's the Republican senator from Wisconsin. And he's actually one of the last remaining Tea Partiers that's in DC. And I make this point all the time. Like, if I was still political, it would probably have more impact. But I think the Tea Party should still be holding out. If you remember, the Tea Party were the ones that decided that they weren't going to confirm the federal budget for like 8 weeks. And all of a sudden, like, the world was going to come to an end and everything was going to fall apart. And,
and they signed it.
I think they should still be holding out. I would relish that if DC just fell to its knees because a handful of people wouldn't sign off on the budget. I thought that would have been absolutely fantastic. But
They might have just taken them out in handcuffs.
Probably they would have found something to trump them up, or
something wrong with them.
there would have been the FBI would have almost assuredly found some documentation on each one of them. But so no, Ron Johnson was an interview of his recently, and he's got the 10th Amendment up there, and I think people really don't understand the government and the history that led to it that they have right now, because, and even more so than the 10th Amendment, I think people don't understand the 9th Amendment. The idea that, again, as an advocate for natural rights and natural law, if you don't understand the 9th Amendment and the fact that you as an individual, if you don't cede certain, rights and basically responsibilities to the state or the federal government, you get to retain them. We've lost sight of that, as 330 million people, we don't understand how powerful we are as individuals. And it's really unfortunate, that we've gotten to that point, but is what it is, like we're faced with the life that we have right now,
Right.
So, but yeah, I don't know. Do you have any other questions for Rebecca? I'm like, I know that you got in late, so.
No. I keep changing topic just because things hit my head.
Well,
you just said the 10th Amendment, and I was like, it was on his thing, and then you're like, what?
No, that is a huge deal. If anyone is interested, definitely Google, or no, don't Google. DuckDuckGo, the 10th Amendment Center, and kind of get some information on the Defend the Guard bill, because I think that's absolutely fantastic.
Sounds like such a good vote. Because if someone chooses to sit and defend this land here and home, they should have that choice when they sign on the line.
Let me ask you, Rebecca, what kind of experience have you had with that? Like, have you been involved in that until now, or are you just getting going with it?
The Defend the Guard?
Yes, yeah.
I actually had just saw a few weeks ago, the Libertarian Party of Arkansas had posted it, and I was like, obviously that's something I want to support,
Yeah.
Because
so it's been pushed in a number of states, and Scott Horton is one of the ones that's really pushing it. Jeff Deist is pushing it. There's a couple of other people. And what's crazy is when this bill, or at least the discussion of this bill, hits committee, the people that are elected, that are supposedly understanding of all of the things that are happening within our government, when it's highlighted what is actually going on, they are appalled. And then what happens is they still vote against the shit. Because
that's the human effect.
Well, it's not just the human effect. It is.
I gotta go back to what we were talking about before.
Like you want to talk about some, how some like people's political persuasions or whatever are simpatico. I mean, like the people who were JFK Democrats back in the late 60s and early 70s, very much so would find a home in the Libertarian Party being anti-war, because obviously it's rumored that the reason why he was assassinated was because of his fight against the military-industrial complex. And it is completely evident when you bring the Defend the Guard bill before these state legislatures, because one, they have no clue what's going on. And two, at the same time, they are so, they have the military-industrial complex in their pockets so much that they, even despite the fact that they're appalled by what's going on, they still can't find
that's like
the moral fortitude to be able to vote against.
That's like the doctors who stood up and said this vaccine shouldn't go to 6 months to 5-year-olds, and we have all these questions, and this doesn't make sense, and this doesn't make sense. But do you vote for it? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
One person abstained out of all of the doctors to make that emergency use authorization for 5 months to 6 years. Same thing.
Yes.
It's like the relationship to the companies.
Well, it's like to pull a parallel. It's like believing just in case, right? But then doing, but then doing the bad stuff.
It's calling the priest in. Well, I don't know. Is it backwards? Is it doing the bad stuff, or is it calling the priest in?
No. It's doing the bad stuff, and then you call the priest in the end for special dispensation before you pass away and be like, oh, I finally found the truth. Like I think that's kind of very, very similar. It's really
we live
appalling.
we live in a world that I prefer to trust myself and my family than most other people.
Oh, 100%. Family first, man. Like, that's where it comes from.
I say this though, Rebecca, to Matt all the time. Like, this idea of like, people, you can't trust them. We innately as human beings, unless you keep yourself in check. We have greed issues, power issues. We have, it's like the human effect, and it shows up everywhere. I think you can keep yourself in check with religion and meditation and yoga and, like information and, talking and that's why you read the podcast, to have the conversations, to check in with other people. And, you know, that's, but when we stop doing that, when we have a certain amount of power, it almost like just sucks you in, I guess, or, you get to a place where it's just, you're run by something else, no longer. Yeah. And that I think is where we are politically. I don't think we're there religiously. I feel like individuals have kind of taken over religion again in a lot of ways. I don't think a lot of people who are Catholic are really into the Pope. Do you? I mean, I could totally be just saying that from a point of view that I have no idea what I'm talking about.
I don't know. Every guy who's been talking to me lately is Catholic. Maybe I should start asking questions.
I feel like the individuals are kind of doing their thing, and I don't feel like they look to the Pope for answers, but maybe they do.
No, I think, quite frankly, I think there was a lot of people, whether they're of the Catholic faith or not, they're beginning to see some of these seats of power that are coordinating with each other. And so, like, if you're Catholic, you might look at the Vatican in a lot different way than you used to.
Yeah.
Right, like in the 60s and 70s,
made some decisions that
in the 60s and 70s, you would have looked to the Vatican for a lot of the path, like a lot of direction,
answers,
right?
Yeah.
Whereas I think nowadays, I think a lot of even mainstream Catholics are very skeptical of the Vatican because they believe that the power, the seat of power, has gotten so concentrated.
And yet at the same time, people are looking to politicians to fix it. And I think they're so lost in that effect. So, it's kind of like
no one is coming to save you.
No one.
But it's like everywhere. You know, it's interesting. We look to companies to save us, to pharmaceutical to save us, to, and we.
What are you saying?
I'm saying I should take myself out of that too. But like the general public, maybe.
I got Lysander Spooner back here that says there is no we.
But in general, right? Like they look to the school. They look to the school to educate them. Like there's the. And
I was talking about that with somebody the other day. Like we're always looking for somebody to blame, raise our kids, and tell us what to do. We don't take responsibility. There's no accountability. There's none. We don't take accountability anymore.
But it's interesting to think about that religion, though it may be going in the same way with things like popes and stuff, I feel like people are taking back religion in a lot of ways. I feel it's coming back to a place of consciousness, to a place of like individual practice and stuff on levels that I have not seen before. So as well, all that's happening on that political, educational, systemic position, and though it may be happening in like the places like the Vatican.
Well, you do know that
that's one place it's free.
Like Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson. I think Thomas Jefferson. I'm getting tired. I'm usually in bed by now, so
yeah.
Me too.
They were deists. I don't know if you know what deism is, but we had the Great Awakening. We had deism, which they believed in God, but they didn't believe that God played into to every aspect of your life, and things like that. So I mean, there's so many. Religion's so cool, isn't
it?
Yeah. So much to learn about
it. There's a lot of complexity there. Actually, I did a series with a guy who runs a natural rights nonprofit out of Montana, and we talked about natural law, natural rights, and its kind of origins within certain types of belief structures, mainly Judeo-Christian. And to your point, Joss, a lot of people who are seeking a life where actions and the results more closely line up or are connected. A lot of them are moving to religion because there is a certain logic to the teachings of the precepts of religion and what the product is, right? Like what the result is. And so a lot of people are moving that direction because
And
you've seen the national narrative,
yeah,
right? Where take student loan forgiveness, take basically the forgiveness of mortgages and debt and bailouts and all this other stuff. We've had a culture that now has kind of de-emphasized actually dealing with the ramifications of your decisions, and it's not a positive. Definitely not a positive.
I think it's religion and spiritual. I place religion and spirituality in the same thing, right? Like I kind of play with them both, but
Yeah.
But yeah,
Can you
I
guys still
think
hear
it's
me?
interesting. Uh-oh. Sorry.
Do we lose you, Rebecca?
She's like,
Can you
I
hear
want
me?
Yes, we got you. Yeah.
Oh, my earpods died. Like my earpods died and everything. I was
That's
like,
serious. I love it. We killed her AirPods.
Yeah. Well, look, you've been on for 2 hours, so
Oh my goodness.
I
was gonna say God help you, and I was like, should I say Goddess help you? And then I was like, I don't even know what to say.
you know what? Nothing offends me, you know. I mean, my ex-husband, he didn't believe in organized religion, and he called me the devil all the time. So
Yeah.
I swore you said your husband never orgasmed when you just said that.
Jesus
like
Christ.
how much wine has she had? What
Oh
is
my
happening?
God.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
That's the complete opposite. He always orgasmed. I never did.
Yeah.
See, that's the problem. Misogyny. I'm back to it. I won't start it up, I swear.
Fucking, he hated me. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I'm not joking. I didn't get off, but no, he didn't hate me. But
I can't say anything after that. I think we have to close the show.
Y'all, it's been so much fun talking to you guys. I hope that you have a wonderful night.
Yes,
same to you.
thank you so much for taking the time, Rebecca. We appreciate it. Look, we would love to have you back on if there's something that comes to your mind that you would like to discuss, or I'm pretty sure there's other stuff that's going to come up for us.
Absolutely.
We'll definitely invite you back on. So have an absolutely fantastic evening. And everyone, if you made it this long, thank you very much. You're a trooper. Definitely catch us next Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, Shane Hazel is going to be with us next week on Monday. So should be an interesting one.
I'm excited. I just want to learn.
Yeah.
I'm going to zip it up next week.
Oh, he's definitely going to drop some knowledge on you. That's for sure.
I'm going to learn.
All right.
Good night, you guys.
Have a good night, Rebecca. Everyone else, peace. We're out.
Bye.